So we're going to start with Murray Scholz. Murray's a farmer between Albury and Wagga, and Murray has really taken things into his own hands in trying to get a solution to good telecommunications infrastructure. So I'd like to welcome Murray to the floor, please.
Good morning, and thank you to the AFI for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. I wanted to talk to you today about telecommunications in rural and regional Australia, especially internet. I'm very fortunate we've got really good mobile phone coverage, so it doesn't really rate on my radar. But internet is a big issue for a lot of people. We hear a lot in the media about the issues of internet, and we hear mostly people talking about download speeds, which is a big issue. But there's just an issue that's just as big, which is the amount of data that people can actually download a month. It's constraining what people can do. It's, in this modern world, internet access is just as important infrastructure as a road or rail service, or power, or any of the other parts of infrastructure that we're used to in our modern world. If you want to do internet banking or marketing or anything that a business needs to do, quality internet is really important. So a bit about us. We're a farming business between Albury and Wagga in southern New South Wales. We grow wheat, canola, barley, lupins, beef cattle, prime lambs. We use a lot of technology in our business. We're probably not at the very cutting edge, but we like to be that second tier, taking stuff up after people have worked out all the issues. So we're using things like 2 centimetre GPS, variable rate lime, soil mapping. All my staff have iPads, so they do all the record keeping that automatically downloads to the system. So we use a bit of technology. My wife's a university lecturer in Wagga. She works from home a couple of days a week, so she really needs quality internet. Most of her work is on the cloud, so she needs to be able to access that to save a 150 kilometre round trip commute. If you've got kids at high school these days, they have to have or at our school, they've certainly got to have a laptop. So they need quality internet to just do their schoolwork, which means we've got a lot of devices. It looks like a lot when you list it all out, but I would contend with any family with teenagers, that's probably a pretty normal amount of technology sitting in the house. So as time's gone on, we've used more and more data. And I have a bit of a rule that if you're on the NextG network, you use as much data as you've got available to you. So in 2008, we were limited to 5 gigabytes a month. 2010, my wife started work, so we instantly doubled. 2012, my son started high school, so it went up again. In 2014, my wife's doing a PhD. We were limited to 35 gigabytes a month. And I don't know if you've ever been on that sort of thing, but we actually had to ration our internet. So every day we knew exactly how much internet we were using and how much we had left for the month, because if you ran out, that was it. Meant my wife had to do the 150k commute just because she didn't have internet. And things like, if you leave the Sydney Morning Herald website open on your browser for the day, that'll use half a gig. We used to, with all those Apple devices, we used to dread the months that Apple does a software update. 2008, it used to be only a 300 or 400 meg per device. Today, it's well over a gig, 1.2, 1.3 gigs. So if you're on 30 gigs a month and you've got 4 or 5 devices, there's 25, 30% of your data gone in one night. Really, really frustrating. In today's modern technology world, the providers all assume that everyone's got unlimited speed, unlimited data. You know, you go buy a new printer, there's no drivers, you've got to download it from the internet. And that's just getting worse and worse. And for that 35 gig, we were paying $260 a month. Very, very frustrating. And as regional goes, I'm not really that isolated. You can see on the map there's a little star there. That's basically where our farm is. If you draw a circle 100 kilometre radius from that star, there's between 100 and 150,000 people live in that circle. So compared to most of Australia, I'm almost just a hobby farm settled in the middle of the city. And yet our only real option was NextG. We're too far away from the exchange to get ADSL, but our exchange didn't actually have ADSL, so it wasn't really an option. And the big issue with NextG is, as phone plans have increased their data limits, the system is just getting clogged. You can almost tell to the minute when high school kids get out of school. You know, the system just goes zoop, and nothing happens. You know, and it just drives you nuts. I don't know what they all do on their smartphones, but they certainly use a lot of data. And so we're really fortunate that NBN fixed wireless started coming to our area. Culcairn was one of the very first towns in Australia to get fixed wireless, and they've slowly rolled it out. Places like Walla Walla, Burrumbuttock, The Rock, Gerodgery, Tabletop, all these areas down here have all got fixed wireless. But the NBN hasn't been very good at communicating their plans for that. So a town like Holbrook or Henty, both reasonably large towns, if you live near them, if you go on the NBN website, the only option you're given today is satellite, Sky Muster satellite. And while Sky Muster is going to be a great leap forward, it really is only just catching up. Most of the plans that we looked at were 150 gigabytes maximum, and of that a large percentage is between midnight and 6 a.m. I don't know how many of you get up between midnight and 6 a.m. to do your internet banking or whatever else you need to do on the internet. So in reality, most people are only going to have 60 to 90 gigabytes of data a month. And while that's a great step forward and a lot better speed than what you're getting over the NextG system, if the growth in data use increases over time, as we've seen in our experience, in another 5 years' time, that's really going to be very inadequate. So when NBN came to Culcairn, this is a map from the NBN website. So the orange circle in the bottom left-hand corner is where the NBN tower is. You can see the house, my house up in the right-hand corner, and our farm is the black line. And the purple areas on the map is fixed wireless coverage. So we were a bit disappointed when we saw that. Very disappointed, in fact. And talking to our Telstra Business Centre, they said to us, well, why don't you put a relay in? Send the signal from your paddock over to your house. And we thought, yep, great. So I rang up NBN and said, can we do that? And they said, no. So we went home with our tail between our legs, and I wrote to my local member and I wrote to the Minister for Communications, and both their offices were incredibly helpful. They could see what we wanted to do. They thought it was terrific. They were very supportive, and NBN said no. And I'm one never to let something get the better of me. I'll go down screaming. So I kept looking, didn't know what to do, and I'm looking at the NBN website and discovered that one of our paddocks had an address in the NBN database. I thought, okay. So I rang up NBN and I said, I want to put NBN to this address. And they said, but your house isn't there. And I said, no, I want a business account. And they said, okay. So that was 6 months of banging my head against the wall to actually just get NBN to go, okay. And so once that happened, this is our gateway to the superhighway. We put a shipping container in. It's got solar panels, batteries, because enough batteries so that we can go 10 days without sunlight to have internet. That's the NBN fixed wireless antenna. That's a Ubiquiti M5 virtual Ethernet cable that sends the signal the 2 kilometres to our house. That they have the capacity to send 300 megabytes a second up to 50 kilometres, I believe. So it's a really great option, and they're about $250 each, so a really cheap option. And how much has the NBN changed our life? Well, you're going to have to believe me on that chart on the left that there's a line there for NextG, but our download speeds have gone from 0.3 megabytes a second to 47, and our uploads have gone from 0.1 to 15. And our data use, you'll probably notice, has jumped just a little bit. Yeah, we've got 35, we're using about 300 gigs a month now. And so it's really nice to be actually part of the... I've gotten off my push bike and gotten into my Porsche. It's really good. So what has it meant to us in real terms? It's increased our productivity enormously. We're not sitting there waiting for things to download. For my wife with her cloud-based stuff, she used to spend a lot of time waiting for stuff to download, or she'd do a whole heap of work on the cloud, and then the signal would drop out and she'd have lost it and have to do it all again. So it's made a massive increase in our productivity. It's opened up cloud computing to us. Before we had the NBN, we didn't know what Office 365 was, or Dropbox, or Evernote, or all those sorts of things that most people in metropolitan areas just take for granted. And it's probably given us the opportunity to take up some of the technology that we've heard about yesterday. You know, I can actually now think about it. Before we had quality internet, it was just not going to even be on the radar. It was like, if you looked at it, it was just like torture. You know, why torture yourself looking at things that you dream of that you can't have? And I'd probably be lying if I didn't say it's also affected our leisure time. And I debated about putting that photo up, and I thought, no, actually, why should I be embarrassed about the fact that I can now watch TV on the internet? You know, metropolitan people take that for granted. And yet, in rural and regional Australia, it's just not even an option. You know, before we had the internet, music streaming, internet TV, online gaming, like our kids didn't know what any of that was. We haven't told them about some of it yet either, but in reality, for a lot of people, there is a very much two-class system in the quality of what they can do with their internet. And before we had NBN, you hear stories about how much trouble traditional media's in, and I could never understand it. But now that we've got it, I can fully understand. Like, my wife and I especially, we rarely watch TV on free to air anymore because we want to watch what we want to watch when we want to watch it. It's a whole new world. So some final thoughts. NBN fixed wireless really is a very good quality product for what it's done. For the alternatives that we just didn't have any other alternatives, and we probably haven't got any other alternatives in the short term. I really do think that Sky Muster, while it is a great step forward, is going to be very inadequate. You know, 60 to 90 gigabytes a month is really not that much amount of data for a business going forward. It's barely adequate for today, but what's it going to be like in 5 years' time or 10 years' time? And I think the NBN and service providers like Telstra, Optus, whoever else, have got a lot of opportunity to expand that fixed wireless coverage area. You know, like I said, those Ubiquiti M5 virtual Ethernet dishes are really cheap. I think you'd find that most people, if they were offered the opportunity to have quality internet service as opposed to satellite, would be willing to pay extra. You know, that container on the hill cost me nearly $10,000. And it was the best $10,000 I've spent in my business. You know, we've now got the option to put Wi-Fi over the whole farm. It's probably only going to cost us less than $5,000 to do that. We haven't done it yet because I haven't seen the need, but today and yesterday sort of reinforced that it's only going to be a year or two before I'm going to have to do it because there's so many options coming. And you're probably wondering why I finished with a picture of a tractor and a seeder, just to prove I am a farmer. But there is a fair bit of technology sitting there. You know, that tractor's running on 2 centimetre GPS, it's got infinite variable transmission, the seeder's got variable rate capabilities, the data's all going up into the cloud straight away as it's happening. All that sort of stuff is only going to keep getting more and more commonplace. Technology's only going to get more and more. There's no going back to the old days of the technology-free zone that we used to live in 25 years ago. And if we haven't got quality communications in rural and regional Australia, we do not have the opportunity to make the most of that technology. It makes it hard to use it now, and if people don't have access, we just aren't going to be able to take up the opportunities as they come along, unlike some of our overseas competitors. And Australian farmers need to remain competitive if we're going to remain a profitable and sustainable industry. Thank you.